have a favorite light modifier? Well, if you don't, today, hopefully, we can change that. You're listening to the Master Your Lens podcast, episode 136.
Hey, John Lee Dumas here, the founder and host of EO Fire, and welcome to the Master Your Lens podcast, the photography podcast dedicated to sharing inspiring stories, technical tips, and powerful secrets to help you become a better photographer. And now, your host, Matthew Jordan Smith.
Hello, Photography Nation. I hope you're having a great day. As you are hearing today's podcast, I'm doing a shoot in Thailand. You may know I've been working on a series for quite a while, going to different parts of the world and shooting this project. Well, I've never shot this in Thailand, and today I'm shooting more in this series, and at this moment, I'm somewhere shooting. Now, in preparing for this shoot, I had to put together all my gear. And normally that includes lighting. However, for this trip, I am not packing lighting gear. And it's probably the first time this year when I've traveled without lighting gear. I do have all my cameras for sure, all my gear in terms of cameras, lenses, etc., tripod, but no lights this time. But don't worry, today's podcast is all about lighting. Even though I didn't pack any gear, any lighting gear, I am using the original light for today's shoot. I'm talking about the sun. The original light. The light that every other light tries to emulate in some way, form, or fashion. From a softbox to a beauty dish or even to an RE-HMI light. They're all trying to look like the sun. Now, an exception would be the RE Sky panel with all those amazing colors. But that's very different. Before I left to go on this trip, I had a one-on-one training session. The one-on-one sessions that I teach are specific for that photographer and targeted to help them become better at lighting and their photography. With my one-on-one private classes, I only take on 10 students a year. The training is intense. And today, I'm going to share a small portion of what we go through during our training sessions. Hopefully, this will help you to become better at your lighting and make you think differently about light. Okay, so let's get down to it. Right before I left for this trip, I had a one-on-one student, and we're going through trying to find out the perfect light modifier for his photography, specifically for his brand of photography, so he can stand out with his images. So his light has its own fingerprint. Now I know a lot of photographers use a softbox. But what if you want a different look to your work? What if you want to create your own specific style of lighting? How do you find out what that is? Today, I want to walk you through the process that I teach all my students and how to find and get the perfect light for you. We are each individual photographers, and we should all have our own style of light. And this exercise helps to create that style. I take all of my one-on-one students through this series of tests. And through this series of tests, each person finds the light, the quality of light that's right for them. Now, this is a very extensive test, so stay with me because I want to walk you through the process. So let's begin. The first thing I want to find out is how many different types of light modifiers each student has. Before I go any further, Let me first explain. I have two different types of courses. One is a general course on lighting called Photography Lighting Course. Then, for those who want to take their training further, there is a private course as well. And that one is specific for those who want individual attention. Today, I'm talking about the individual training. And at this point, all of those students in one-on-one, they all own strobe lights and they're looking to refine their light. They may have different types of lights and different types of light modifiers. This is where it goes deeper. So the first thing I do is find out how many different modifiers that photographer has. He or she may have 4 or 5 different light modifiers. They may have 1 or 2 different softboxes. They may have a beauty dish. They may have other types of modifiers. I'll find out first how many modifiers they have. Then we set up a session, now this is online, where we go through a test together. Let's say you have a softbox, and that's your main light modifier that you use most of the time. But the idea is to find out how you like your softbox. The first thing I want to do is have my student set up the light the way they normally use it. Then, using a light meter, and this is very important, this test is about precision to find out what they like and what they don't like. So using the light meter, we'll have a subject or a test subject. In many cases, this is a mannequin, and we'll do the entire test on the mannequin. The mannequin will be in one spot and stay there. The camera will be on a tripod in the same spot and stay there. The light will also be in the same position for the entire test. So the subject, the camera, and the light for the entire test are all in the same place. And it stays this way throughout the entire test. Nothing moves. We'll make sure the ISO on the camera and the ISO on the light meter are set to be the same. For example, if the ISO on the camera is ISO 100, the ISO on the light meter is also ISO 100. The camera will be in the manual mode. We'll set the light meter to read for strobe. We'll set our shutter speed to the max shutter speed for the camera. And that will change with each camera. For example, for some cameras, it may be 160. For others, it may be 200. For others, it may be 250. We'll find out the max shutter speed for that student and their camera and set it there. To make things simple, we'll say it's 1/125th of a second. Now that we have our shutter speed, now that we have our ISO set, we'll now use our light meter and take a reading of the strobe. And let's say, for example, the first reading gets us to read F4. For the sake of the test, I want to have a little more power, so I'll have them take up the power on this strobe by 2 stops to get it to read F8.0. The 0.0 is very important. I don't believe in guessing. So with each of my students, we set the light meter to read in 1/10 of a stop. This way, if it's reading 8.2 or 8.4, I know exactly how to adjust the light. We start by getting our light to read exactly 8.0 for the f-stop. Now again, our ISO is set to ISO 100 on the camera and on the light meter. The sync speed is set, in this case, to 1/125th of a second. Once we have our settings, we'll turn our camera to read F8. Now remember, the camera is set to manual. Our meter told us the reading is F8.0 at 1/125th of a second at ISO 100. We set the exact settings on our camera. F8 at 1/125th of a second, ISO 100. Now at this point, Everything is ready to go except for one major part. Today, our camera records all the metadata, so we don't need to write that down. However, the camera does not know the modifier, and this is the main point of this test, to test the modifier. We'll then go through and using a note card, write down the name of the modifier or the type of modifier. In this case, it's a softbox. We'll put down the size of the softbox and put full softbox to indicate that this is a full softbox with all the diffusion inside. Once this information is written down on the note card, we'll then fasten that note card to the mannequin, either with a push pin or tape to make sure it stays. We'll pin that to the mannequin, so visually we know which modifier we are shooting. Now we are ready to take our first shot. Bam! The first shot is taken at f8. Now, whenever I'm teaching this process of going through and finding the right light modifier, people want to shoot fast. But it is extremely important that you take your time and document everything in the right way. The student will take one picture only. But before they take that picture, I want them to verify everything, that the note card has the right modifier, the right size of modifier, and then also to verbally confirm all the settings. Once we have all that information, then I give them the green light to take that first picture. This test is about learning how to see light. We'll start with a full softbox, meaning all the diffusion is inside of the softbox. Normally there's 2 layers of diffusion. For our next image, we're going to shoot the same situation, but take the inner diffusion panel out of the softbox. Once we remove the inner panel of diffusion in the softbox, we'll again go back to our light meter and read the light. Now, because we've taken that inner diffusion out, there's more power coming out. So before, if it's reading f8, it might read 8.6 or 8.5 or 8.4. There's more light coming through. In this case, we will adjust the power on the strobe to get back to reading f8. Now, this is very important. And this is why we use a light meter. You can't do this by looking at the histograms. This test is about being exact. So with the inner diffusion taken out, we remeter using a light meter, and in my case, it's a Sekonic light meter, set to read in 1/10 of a stop. We'll get the light to read back to being f8.0 again exactly. This may take some time of adjusting your light to get it exactly to read f8. But then, and only then, will we change our note card. The mannequin head is in the same place. The camera is in the same place. The light is in the same place. The only thing we have changed is our light modifier. We've taken one layer of diffusion out, and we've reduced the power coming out of our strobe so it again reads f8. We'll change our note card to indicate the softbox has only one layer of diffusion. The first image was shot with the softbox being full diffusion. The second shot, there's only one panel of diffusion and it's indicated on the note card. The size of the softbox, and that we're only using one layer of diffusion. The camera is still f8, shutter speed still 1/25 of a second, ISO is still 100. Now we are ready to shoot our second image. Bam! The second image is now taken. Now what we have at this point is two images that look almost identical. to the untrained eye. However, on closer inspection, you start to see the small difference in changing the light modifier. Now we're ready to go deeper. We'll now, for our third image, take off the outer level of diffusion. You now have a harder version of a softbox with all the diffusion taken off. Again, we use our light meter. We take a reading. That light may read F11 now because we've taken all the diffusion off. It's still soft, but not as soft as the first two versions of this test. We also have too much light coming through. So what do? We use our light meter again and turn down our power to get it back to F8, exactly 8.0. This may take 2 or 3 attempts in adjusting your light to make sure you get it to read 8.0, F8 on the nose. Is this time consuming? Yes, it is. Is it worth it? Yes. Now, throughout this entire process, I am watching as my student shoots this assignment, shoots this test. I can see if they're holding the light meter correctly, if they're blocking light, or if anything else is wrong. And I love that. No matter where they are in the world, I can watch and give instruction. And most importantly, I can slow them down. People make mistakes when they rush through tests. Every now and then, a student wants to do the test on their own. And then I'll look at the test in the next session. I can see right away when they've forgotten one critical step and rushed through the test. But this is why I love to do it with them one-on-one, so I can slow them down and make sure they get the full test and do it in the correct manner. Now for the third shot, we've adjusted our light to read F8 again. We've changed the note card. The note card now reads softbox, the size of the softbox, and without any diffusion whatsoever. Once the student confirms all the data and the note card, and that we are both set at F8, and that the reading is reading with the light meter F8.0, we're ready to shoot the third frame. Bam! We have 3 shots, all shot at F8. Visually, all 3 shots look almost the same, except for one small difference: the quality of light. And this is where you learn to train your eye how to see. It's very subtle at first, until you train your eye. Now, this is one modifier. We'll then go through each and every modifier they have, doing the same exact tests. By now, you can tell this is a very extensive test. It does take a while to do this test. But once it's done, you see light like you've never seen it before. It takes you to a new place of understanding light and understanding your modifiers. This is how you craft and make your style of light. Now, if you want to know more about this, stay tuned for our next webinar coming up toward the end of November. You definitely don't want to miss this webinar. Again, stay tuned for next week's episode of the Master Your Lens podcast to find out the date and time and how you can sign up for our next webinar. It's all about photography and all about light. If you want to be a better photographer, learn all of your gear, not just your cameras and lenses, but your light. Discover the type of light that you like to use. the type of modifier that you like to use, the look to your photography that you want your pictures to have. Success does not come haphazardly. It takes training, and this is the process, and this is how you get there. All right, Photography Nation, time for me to get back and start shooting again. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a great day. Continue staying tuned to the Master Your Lens podcast. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. I'll be posting pictures from my trip here in Thailand, and hopefully I'll see you back here again next week on the Master Your Lens podcast as we go deeper into learning more about light. I'm Matthew Jordan Smith, signing out, wishing you a great day. Always dream big. Keep shooting, keep dreaming, and pushing yourself to be better. Until next week, always dream big. Bye for now.